name is Stephanie, and this is episode 147. Today I have some finished projects to share with you that are knit and sewn, and I do have a few works in progress to share with you as well. I'm coming to you from a beautiful autumnal day here in Minnesota where I live. It had been pretty chilly with the evenings and early mornings in like the mid 40s, like 45 degrees Fahrenheit, which I believe is 8 degrees Celsius. I think that's what I said last week anyway. And then the highs have been in the 60s. This week it has warmed up some where the highs are in the 70s, but definitely still very, very comfortable and so nice. The leaves are starting to turn yellow and orange, and it is just so beautiful. We are in the second week of September, year 2025. If you are new here, the way I usually organize my videos is we start with an intro welcome section. I go into finished projects and or what I am wearing, and then works in progress, and then an eats and reads section where I share with you maybe things I've cooked or baked recently and any books that I have read recently or I'm planning on reading. And then sometimes there's a food for thought section at the end. It will just be something usually related to making because making is part of my 24/7, but it's something that's in my mind, on my heart, and I don't believe I've written anything down for that section today, and so I do have things written down for the other 3 sections. I do include timestamps for those sections in the description box below this video, as well as links to makers, my projects. I do use Ravelry, but those do not include sewn projects. All of my videos include closed captioning, and I do include some visual things on the screen in addition to me here talking, but there will be some pictures inserted here and there, and so if you are doing something else, I just wanted to make note of that. If I speak faster or slower than your preferences, YouTube also allows you to adjust the speed. I think that is all the things I wanted to talk about in this intro section. You will have seen another bouquet of flowers from our garden. Things are maybe starting to wind down a little bit, but we have a bouquet of these beautiful purple turtle heads, some dahlias, these red flowers. I cannot remember what they are called, but they are just so much fun, and they look like little fireworks in a bouquet, and they just add another element of texture and shape, and I love that their petals are a little bit different. They're soft, but they look a little bit spiky, and so I just love how all of these different shapes play so nicely together. All right, let's jump into finished projects. What I would like to share with you today is my Lakes cardigan. This is a pattern by Haley Smedley of Ozetta, and I have it paired with a sewn outfit. This is the Ashton Top by Helen's Closet, and I have a self-drafted tiered gathered skirt that I've paired it with. This fabric is Fabulism, and I just love it so much. I'm going to stand up on this bench so that you can see the skirt. It goes past my knees, probably mid-calf length. I do have inseam pockets, and the waist is elastic plus a drawstring tie. I explained in the previous video that I really like that combination because it just makes it a little more versatile if I want to wear it higher or lower, and I never feel like it's stuck or too tight anywhere or too loose if I have like a phone or something in my pocket or my keys. It doesn't feel like my skirt's going to fall off, and so I just really like that combination there. Let's talk about this cardigan. Let me pull up my notes for this project. I love how it turned out. I'm so excited to talk to you about it. I just recently finished it, and so hopefully more of the details are fresh in my mind. But I started this cardigan the end of July, and again, I just finished it. So I knit the second size, which finishes at 41.25 inches. Recommended positive ease is about 10 inches, but the amount of positive ease goes down as you go up in size. The pattern does come in 10 sizes, and the gauge is 16 stitches by 24 rows. Recommended needles are a US 9, 5.5 millimeter, and a US 8, which is a 5 millimeter. I went down in needle size for both of those to a US 8 for the main and a US 7 for the ribbing. The yarns recommended are a worsted and a lace weight. My yarn was provided by Purl Soho as yarn support for this specific project. I used Purl Soho's Hedgerow, which is this beautiful rainbow tweed. And I paired it with Pearl Soho's Tussock, which is a mohair silk, and the golden yellow really blends in with the tweed. I didn't bring with me any of the yarn caked up, so hopefully I have pictures of it somewhere and I'll insert it here on the screen. If not, sorry about that. The hedgerow colorway is called Golden Meadow. It is 93% merino, 3.5% cashmere, and 3.5% mulberry silk. It comes in 243 yards for 100 grams, so it's about a DK weight type of yarn. But I feel like because it is a stickier yarn, it is non-superwash, I tend to knit that kind of yarn looser because it tends to want to grip on itself. And so my gauge then is different compared to maybe if I was knitting with a smoother DK weight yarn. Just an observation I've made. I have knit with this yarn, I think 3 times now. I will say that even though there is cashmere in it, I would not be able to notice if there was. It is not super scratchy, but I would not call it super soft. Usually if I think of cashmere yarn, I think of something that's really soft, but I don't feel it, honestly, in this. The yarn does block out beautifully and softens up afterwards. In this case, I feel like the mohair really added to the softness of this yarn. Now, if you are allergic to mohair, it will probably feel like hay, but I am not allergic to mohair, and I feel like the tussock silk mohair is super, super soft and luxurious. The mohair is 60% superfine kid mohair and 40% silk. It comes in 328 yards for 25 grams. So it is definitely a much lighter lace weight mohair than some other mohairs that I have tried. And so it still fills in the fluff of the gaps, but I would say it definitely isn't as floofy or poofy as some other mohairs, and definitely thinner than Surrey alpaca lace weight. And so if you are looking for a mohair that just adds a little bit more, I feel like this is a great one to use. Plus it has a lot of yardage per 25 grams. And so sometimes I feel like patterns will list the same amount of yardage or the same amount of mohair to purchase compared to whatever main yarn you're holding it with, but I feel like the amount of mohair I end up using ends up being less than the amount of the main color, and so in this case that turned out to be the same as well, so I definitely didn't need as much of the mohair as I did of the main color. This pattern is knit top down. You start with the saddle shoulders, which essentially act as a gauge swatch. So I did not knit a separate gauge swatch, I just knit the saddle shoulders. So I knit these 2 rectangles first. I'll hopefully have a picture here on the screen so you can see what that looks like. And then you pick up and you knit the back, and then you pick up and you knit each side of the front, and then you join the front and the back in the underarm area across, knit the sleeves, and knit the button band. I like to knit my button band before I knit the sleeves because then I know how it fits over my shoulders better, and then I know how long I want to knit the sleeves, because if I don't know how it sits on my shoulders, my sleeves may end up too long or too short. It does call for a tubular bind off everywhere. I believe in the pattern it calls it an Italian tubular bind off, but I thought the Italian sewn bind off didn't use setup rows, but I don't really know. I did do the setup rows in the body hem, and I think it looks fine. It has that rolled edge, but I will say that I don't prefer the fuss of doing the setup rows. I just like to do my Italian sewn bind off without the setup rows, so that's what I did for everywhere else. The sleeves, and I don't know if there was anywhere else I needed to do that for, but I know for the body I followed the instructions as they said to do the setup rows, and I just feel like that extra time and fuss is not really worth the outcome for me, so I'm probably not going to do that again. The button band is ribbed. It's actually a really cool button band on how it picks up the stitches from the edge as you go, and this is the same kind of button band I think I knit for the port jacket, also by Ozetta, and I really like it. I like how it looks. It kind of has that double knit look without having to double knit. It's actually 1x1 rib, and I feel like it sits really well with the buttons. I'm going to show you my buttons up close. I love these buttons. They are sheep weather vanes, and they look really cool. I hope the detail shows up on camera. They aren't the ones that have the holes. I don't know what you call these, but it has basically a built-in shank, so you don't have to make a shank on the bottom. And the purpose of a shank on a button is so that it doesn't pull when you close it, because there's that extra space there to keep your button band from pulling and creating that like wavy effect. Oops, I think I missed. I try to remember to button from the bottom up because then you don't end up missing a buttonhole. Okay, so I have them all buttoned up. They look nice and straight. I feel like I don't have like a big wave along the edge. They sit so nice. I love this V-neck. I'm gonna back up a little bit. Hopefully you can see it a little bit better. I think the V-neck isn't too low or too high. It sits very nicely, and I just love how it looks. My sleeves go past my wrist, which is what I like. I like having the option of being able to fold up my sleeves. If I'm doing something and I don't want them to get wet, I feel like having them cuffed looks really nice, but I also really like them long just to be extra cozy, and I don't like wind going up my sleeve. I knit it to like high hip length. When I look at the measurements on the pattern, I feel like my measurements were pretty close. My sleeves might have been about the same. I think everything was within an inch of whatever the pattern recommended, but I don't feel like mine looks as oversized as what the pattern looks like. But I think that's probably because of the size I picked, maybe. The size I picked is more like 8 or 9 inches of positive ease instead of the recommended 10 1/4 positive ease. But I really like how this fits on me, and I feel like if I went up a size, it might have been more oversized than the look I was wanting. And so I'm so pleased with how this turned out. The amount of yarn I ended up using was 334 grams of the main color, the hedgerow. And then for the mohair, I used 68 grams. I don't have that calculated out in yardage, so hopefully I'll put that here on the screen. All of my notes are on my Ravelry project page, which again is linked in the description box below this video. Something I did want to note is that if I were to knit this again, I would do my neckband rib in 2 sizes smaller. So because I knit my main fabric in a US 8, I probably would have knit my neckband collar on a US 6. I did it on a US 7. I did my button band on a US 7. The pattern does say you might want to go down 1 or 2 needle sizes for this ribbing part. And at the time I just thought, oh, I'll just do the 1 less. Well, I think I could have gone down 2. And the reasoning is that I find it stretching out a little. Now I've already resolved that issue and I'm going to show you what I did. I threaded elastic thread through the top portion of just the collar. I'm gonna hold it up so you can see it, hopefully. It is white and it is stretchy, but it is not super noticeable from the inside and definitely not noticeable at all on the outside. I feel like it adds a little bit of stability. It is still stretchy, but it's going to hold its shape much better than if it wasn't there. And over time, ribbing sometimes like to stretch, especially if it's on a part where the fabric of the entire garment is hanging off of it. And so I just feel like adding that elastic thread, there's 2 lines of it, just holds that shape a lot better. It is anchored on each side at this pickup point, which has more stability. And so I don't foresee it having an issue in the future. And if I really needed to replace it at some point, like if it got super stretched out, I know where the end is and I could just replace that elastic thread. I don't know if I would have added the elastic thread if I had gone down 2 needle sizes for the neckband, but I think maybe I would have done it anyway because I do like how it cinches this edge in a little bit and it just adds that extra bit of stability where I'm not going to worry about it falling off my shoulders. I don't think this shape would fall off my shoulders anyway. So I think this is a good time for me to mention a make-along that I am hosting. It is the Make All the Cardigans Make-Along, and I will put the hashtag here on the screen. I don't really have a lot of rules for it because I don't like to have a lot of rules in my creative process. I started it August 15th. A friend and I were talking about how we wanted to make all the cardigans and that we were just really into cardigans right now. And so I kind of half jokingly said that maybe I should have a make-along that's making all the cardigans. And so that's what happened. And it's very relaxed. Any works in progress are welcome. If you're knitting it, crocheting it, sewing it, whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a certain size. Maybe it's for a stuffed animal. Maybe you have a work in progress that is 5 years old and you just have to sew on the buttons. Go ahead, do it. use the hashtag, tag me in it on Instagram so that I can see your wonderful project. And if I'm able to, I will share it to Instagram stories. And my hope is that people are cheering each other on and that people learn something. Maybe you've never made a cardigan before. Maybe you really want to try it. Maybe you want to try top down. Maybe you want to try bottom up. Maybe you want to try seaming the front and back and whatever pieces together. Maybe you want to try a modular one. Maybe you want to try one that's made out of granny squares. There are so many options, and I'm just really hoping that when people click on that hashtag, they will find inspiration and they will be excited to make a cardigan for themselves or a loved one or a stuffed animal. I really like cardigans for lots of reasons. I feel like they are more of an all season, all year round wear. Okay, mohair, not a summer thing, but in general, I feel like cardigans, and you can make them in any fiber content, right? Can be worn all the time. And they can show off whatever you're wearing underneath. A pullover just covers it all up. And what if I want to wear my mini mock neck tank under this cardigan? What if I have this really cool graphic tee that I want to wear underneath? I just feel like, aside from the versatility of it being something that I can wear and still kind of air myself out if I get too hot, it also allows you to showcase other things that maybe you have made, but they don't have to be handmade. Other things that you are wearing underneath the cardigan can also be shown off if you want to. Okay, I am getting way too hot to have this mohair cardigan on. I will talk about this set I am wearing. This is again the Ashton top by Helen's Closet. It is a sewing pattern and this fabric is Fabulism. It's 100% cotton. I just love it. It is so cute. This color is like an olivey green, so I feel like it's one of those neutrals that's pretty easy to match with anything. It's kind of earthy. I purchased 2.5 yards from Lake's Makery, and the fabric comes in, I think, a 44 or 45 inch width. It's got this really fun patterning on it that looks a little bit like daisies. I cut out the pattern size recommended for my body measurements. I did lengthen the cropped view by 1 inch because I knew I was going to be turning it under to hem it, which is not the instructions in the pattern. And I can wear this on its own, or I can wear it with a skirt that I also made from the material. To save on fabric, on the inside for the bias binding, I used a quilter's cotton that's brown and looks like knit stitches or leaves. And then for the skirt, I used up the rest of the material, and my pockets are a linen fabric, as well as my waist tie is the same linen fabric. And then the amount of fabric I have left is pretty minimal. I could probably make myself a notions pouch with the remaining material plus other fabric. The next finished project I'd like to share with you are a pair of socks. Ta-da! I don't typically gravitate towards cables, but on a pair of socks where it isn't for very long, I thought I would give it a try. These are the 2025 August Cuff Club Volume 2 by Summer Lee. And this yarn is Sister Weekend Yarn Co. I cast on for the adult medium, but I used a size needle smaller than the one called for in the pattern, so I used a US 0, which is a 2mm needle. I used that for the entire sock. These cables are really fun to knit. You don't need a cable needle. You don't need to really pinch the yarn or anything. And so I really enjoyed this process. I did do one less repeat because I wanted to knit them as short socks. And the yarn came with this gray plus this really cool neon blippy yarn. And I used about 7 grams of the gray, and I used about 42 grams of the main color. I wear a US women's 7.5 size shoe. So this main color is navy with blips of neon pink, blue, purple, and yellow. It is super fun. It looks like tweed from a distance, but it is not tweed. They are blips that are only a few stitches long throughout. I used a shadow wrap short row heel, and then I believe I knit a rounded toe, not a wedge toe. The rounded toe means I alternate decrease rounds with knit even rounds until I get to a certain number on the top and bottom stitches, and then I do decreases round And then I do decrease rounds all the way until I hit a point where I want to graft the top and bottom together. So I knit my socks mostly on 9-inch circulars because that's what's comfortable in my hands. And then when I get to the toe, I switch to magic loop so that I have my instep stitches on one needle and the bottom half of the stitches on the other needle. These fit really well. I really like the fabric density. This yarn is a 75-25 superwash merino nylon. It is a light fingering weight yarn. It is 4-ply, and I believe the 463 yards for 100 grams. I think that's the light fingering weight yarn that a lot of the dyers use. I think I've come to prefer the fabric density for socks using that yarn when I use a US 0 or 2mm needle. My gauge is closer to like a 9 stitch or 9.5 stitches per inch, and I just like how that wears better over time. I feel like the fabric holds up better, and with socks that have a lot of friction and a lot of wear, I want something that is going to wear well over time. We are moving on to works in progress. There is one I was going to show you, but I think I'm going to hold off because I'm so close to finishing it that this way I don't have to talk about it again in like a week or two. And so we're just going to save that one until next time. But I still have 3 here that I want to share with you. So while we are on the Cuff Club by Summer Lee, I'm going to show you that one next. So I didn't explain the Cuff Club. Last year, Summer Lee had a colorwork Cuff Club where every month you had a new colorwork chart that plugs into a base pattern for a pair of socks. This year, she's exploring more texture. I believe there might still be colorwork. August had a colorwork and a cable. And I think September just had a cable cuff, I think. And so I'm going to share with you what I did for September, or what I am doing for September. The cabling on this one does use a cable needle, and so that is what I did. Again, I'm not a big fan of cabling in general because I find it really fiddly and I can't get into a good rhythm for it, and I'm so afraid of dropping stitches, but I persevered, and on a sock there are just so much fewer stitches than on a sweater. I don't think I'm going to be someone that's going to be knitting any all over cabled sweaters anytime soon, or maybe ever, but on a sock I can handle it on a cuff. And I did something different this time where I'm using sport weight yarn, and I've gone up a needle size and I'm knitting the smallest size in the pattern. Are you ready to see? Ta-da! Don't these look so cool? I am really enjoying how these are popping out on the screen here. At least I hope they're popping out on the screen for you. The yarn I am using for the cuff is Hawthorne Fingering Kettle Dyed by Knit Picks. It is labeled as fingering, but I think it's closer to a sport weight yarn. And I have it here. I'm going to show you what it looks like. This is one of those colors that is kind of a chameleon. It's like a gray, but undertones of purple. It is a very high twist yarn, and it comes in 357 yards for 100 grams. This colorway is Kern, I think Kearns. It's 80% superwash fine Highland wool, 20% polyamide. I find this yarn very durable for socks. I like how it wears. I don't usually machine wash. But this is machine wash cold, tumble, dry, low for the care, which also makes it good for gift knitting if you are looking for gift knit type of yarns. And I just really like how it holds up. Again, it says it's fingering weight, but I use it more of a sport weight type of yarn. So I am using US 2, which is a 2.75 millimeter needle. Again, I am on 9-inch circulars, and I am pairing this contrast with Nomadic Yarns Succulent Garden in Twisty Sport. This yarn is so pretty. I have been really wanting to cast on another self-striping pair, and I love these colors. We get a dark purple, a lighter purple, a peach, an orange, 2 shades of green. It is so beautiful. And so after I finished my cuffs, I've joined in my self-striping yarn, and away I go. I was going to knit these as shorties, but because I'm using a self-striping yarn, I think I'm going to knit them long and use up as much of the yarn as I want because I like to see these stripes, and I'm so excited about this. As you can see, I knit my socks in tandem, so that means I knit them on their own needles, but at the same time, in the sense that I do one, and then I knit the other, and then I knit 10 rounds maybe, and then I knit 10 rounds, and basically they just keep playing catch up with each other, so they're always at about the same spot. And then when I'm done, I'm done. Now some of you may think, why don't you just knit them all on one needle, like a 40-inch cable, and knit them two at a time? I've tried it in the past and I just don't like how it feels. I feel lopsided. Plus, if I only want to bring one sock somewhere, then I would have to do some management to shift that sock off the needle and onto another one, whereas this, it's already on its own needle and I can just take one with me if I am going somewhere and I just need a small little project. I don't need to mess with anything. And I, again, prefer knitting on 9-inch circulars, and so I feel like this is just a very tidy little cute project, and it works really well like this for me. I always finish a pair of socks this way because I don't feel like I have to start all over again by casting on a second sock. And then my tension is more even because I'm knitting on the same section around the same time, whatever my stress level is at that time. So I also don't end up with one sock a lot bigger or one sock a lot smaller, just depending on when I'm knitting that sock. I'm saying this from experience because it has happened several years ago where I knit two socks like maybe several months from each other, and one ended up a lot smaller and one was a lot bigger. So again, these are my September Cuff Club socks, and I am just really enjoying how these look. Next project I'm going to share with you is back to the Campus Cardigan. This is a pattern that is in the test knitting phase, and this is a pattern by Amy Sure of Amy Sure Makes. I have finished my first one, and that I will talk about when the pattern is released, but I'm going to show you my second one. I am really excited about this one. I'm going to make it a little different. My first one I knit high hip length. This one I'm going to knit the full length, and I cast on size A for the first one, but it's size B for the sleeves. This one I'm going to do size B all the way throughout. For a slightly roomier fit, especially since I am knitting it a little bit longer. The yarn that I'm using is generously provided by Pearl Soho. This is knitting yarn. It's 100% non-superwash merino wool. I love this yarn so much for DK weight projects. The colorway I'm using is called Sour Citron. It is this like yellowy green that isn't the same olivey yellow green as my top here, but more of a vibrant, brighter cousin to this olivey green. And I think these two are gonna look really nice together as well. This comes in 219 yards for 100 grams, and I love this yarn. This might be my fourth garment in this yarn, maybe fifth garment in this yarn. I really like how it wears over time. I really like how light it feels. I have knit it at a few different gauges. I think I have knit it at 18 stitch, 19 stitch, and 20 stitch gauge per 4 inches. And I like how it feels on all of those gauges. I have just cast on. This is a bottom up pattern, and here is the ribbing that I have started on. I really like this yarn's stitch definition. It is a very round yarn, but not dense. I feel like some really round yarns can feel really dense, but I don't feel like this one is really dense, and yet it also still has really good stitch definition. I do have a progress keeper on here that is tea leaves. This was gifted by Amy from their online web shop. My third work in progress I'm sharing with you today is one that I have not knit before, and one that I am modifying from a pullover to a cardigan. This is the Skyline Pullover by Tori Yu. I have knit the Skyline tee. I tested that pattern for Tori was it last summer or 2 summers ago? And I had the Skyline pullover, which is the fuzzy DK weight long sleeve version of that fingering weight tee. And I am knitting it as a cardigan because again, I want more cardigans. And the way I'm doing it is instead of joining in the round where it says to join in the round, I continue knitting flat. I did cast on a few stitches for that middle section, but also knowing I'm going to pick up for a button band, I don't have to adjust that circumference too much. I picked the second size, which finishes at 42 inches. Recommended ease is 8 to 10 inches. As a cardigan, I want more positive ease because it will be worn as a layering piece. This is a saddle shoulder top-down construction, and I did something fun with the saddle shoulders. I striped them. Here we are. Here we are. How fun is this? So like I mentioned, I really like Pearl Soho's knitting yarn. This yarn I did purchase myself, and I am so in love with these colors together. This is a DK weight yarn. My main color is mahogany. It's this dark red. It's heathered. It is so delightful and fall and autumnal. And then my shoulders, I'm using a wild guava, which is this bright neon coral. I have it paired with cat paw pink, which is this light peachy pink that I purchased during a sample sale a couple years ago. So that color is not available, but wild guava and mahogany red are both available on the website. I did my shoulders using bamboo needles because I felt like my tension on the metal needles was too loosey-goosey. And so I ripped that out and did it over on bamboo needles. And instead of having all these ends to weave in, I wet spliced all of my ends as I went. So about 5 stitches before I knew I was going to change my color, I cut the yarn, wet spliced it together, and kept knitting. So I'm going to show you the wrong side. There are pretty much no ends to weave in. It is so tidy and it looks great. I don't see where the color change happens on the edges. I feel like it is all tucked in nice and neat, and the change mostly happens along this pickup edge, which is on the inside anyway. Right now I am working on the body section. I have joined the fronts and the back already, and so it's just stockinette flat. Away we go. And then once I finish the body, I will do the button band. I haven't quite decided how I want to do the button band yet. I might do something similar to my Lakes cardigan, or I'll do a regular like ribbed situation where I pick up everything and do that. I'm not sure yet. I will figure that out when I get to that point, but right now I'm thinking I might do the same thing as I did on the Lakes cardigan and do like a neck band up to like the end of the front part of the saddle shoulder, and then do a straight one for the front. I think that's what I'll do. I have the perfect buttons to go with this. The buttons I purchased from Amy's web shop. I'm going to take one button out of the packaging here to show you. It is a dark reddish brown resin button with these white iridescent flecks in it. I have 5 of these buttons and I think it's going to be perfect. All right, on to eats and reads. I finished 2 books recently. I mentioned I had 2 holds to pick up last week, and I finished the 2 books. So the way I like to talk about my books is I usually don't give you a synopsis because I'm always afraid I'm going to give away some sort of spoiler, and plus you can look up a synopsis online anywhere. I usually give my take on the writer's style and how I felt about the reading experience, and then I also have a picture of the book cover on the screen just for visual aid. So the first book I'm going to talk about is The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell. The Great British Bake Off season has kicked off, and I thought, okay, this might be a fun book to read. I don't know how I heard about it, but Somehow it piqued my interest and I put it on hold at the library. It's 288 pages, standalone, published March 2023. It is a quick read. I will say it was not life-changing, and at certain parts I felt like there were some plot holes, but let me backtrack. It's basically a combination of The Great British Bake Off and Clue. This one is set in Vermont, USA. It is set in modern times. We have like the sprawling lawn and the big mansion. It is a cozy murder mystery, adult fiction, thriller type of genre. Each chapter takes you through a different point of view from each of the contestants and the host. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. It was an enjoyable read and it was fun getting to know the characters. The characters were all very different. They kind of came together. I feel like the pacing was a little weird because at the end it just seemed like everything was dumped together, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. Overall, I still felt like it was an entertaining read, but there were definitely some plot holes and some questionable things. So that is The Golden Spoon. The other book I read is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. 432 pages, published April 2025. I'd had it on hold since probably April, and it took a while to get to me, but I did finally read it. I will say I'm not like the biggest rom-com reader, and I'm also not like a huge Emily Henry fan. I read it more out of curiosity as to maybe the hype or just to read it. To read just to read. I'm okay with reading just to read. Everything doesn't have to be life-changing or like the best book ever. I'm okay with just giving it a read. Plus, if I really don't like something or I'm just not into something, I'm very okay with not finishing books and just returning them to the library. This is an adult contemporary fiction romance. It has the small town beach setting. We've got our main characters in their 30s plus a third main character in their 60s. It's kind of a mystery, slow burn romance. But I have to say, I always have a hard time with like insta-love type of relationship situations. Like in this one, I feel like I missed the emotional arc of who is this guy to I can't live without him. Like I like missed something there. And there are definitely several spicy scenes that go on for several pages. And I feel like if that's not your thing, you can always skip those pages because they don't really add to the plot, and just like keep reading if you want, or read them. To each their own. I'm just saying they're there. You definitely get the grumpy sunshine trope. I feel like sometimes it works and sometimes it's kind of cartoony and one-dimensional. And in this case, I feel like it just became a little repetitive. I guess you could say it's consistent, but I feel like human beings are a little more complex than that. So sometimes it ends up coming across as a little cartoony. Again, to each their own. So overall, I found it entertaining. I did enjoy this third character in there, which I feel like is not usually in other Emily Henry books, whereas the focus is more on just like the two people and like the romance plot line, whereas this one had another element to it. Though at some points I felt like it was kind of drawn out and you could kind of predict what was going to happen, but again, entertaining, not life-changing. That is Great Big Beautiful Life. Okay, I think that is everything I wanted to share with you today. I'm not sure if I'm going to be back here next week to chit chat or the week after that. I don't record on any sort of schedule. I know some people are very set on like a certain day, maybe even a certain time. I don't operate like that here. I squeeze it in when I can and I publish when I can. I just wanted to put that out there in case there are any new viewers here who may not know how things work around here, and I just don't want anybody disappointed if they're expecting something every week. That isn't realistic for me to do that, and I will be making things whether or not I record or share here on YouTube. With that, cheers to being creative. I hope you are doing well, taking care of yourselves, your loved ones, and your neighbors, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!